I was going on a 6-week tour of Penang, Sabah, Sarawak, Singapore and JB, conducting Satipatthana Sutta study with meditation workshops, 4-day workshops. Towards the end of one of my workshops in Kuching, one of the participants asked me, now we've got so many teachers and everyone is claiming that theirs is the most genuine and the most effective way to practice. How do we go about choosing the right method? I'm sure the same question must also be in your minds, right? Especially in KL, so many monks come and go, and then you also have got lay teachers. Undeniably, having a good spiritual friend is very important. In the Anguttara Nikaya, the Buddha said that there is no other thing that is so much responsible for the arising of unwholesome qualities in a person as bad friendship. And nothing so helpful for the arising of wholesome qualities as good friendship. Then in another sutta in the Anguttara Nikaya, he goes on to say that there's no other external factor that leads to so much harm as bad friendship, and no other external factor that leads to so much benefit as good friendship. I'm sure there are many parents here, and you're all very careful about your children. When they are growing up in a very impressionable age, you wouldn't want them to mix with bad company. So it's the same for people on the spiritual path. If you really want to walk the spiritual path, you have to be very selective of the company that you keep. How important is a spiritual friend when you walk the spiritual path? In one sutta in the Samyutta Nikaya called Upada Sutta, Venerable Ananda told the Buddha that according to his opinion, a good spiritual friend constitutes half of the holy life. And the Buddha reproaches Ananda for saying that, and he asserts that a good spiritual friend constitutes the whole of the holy life. And he gave the example of himself. Because of having a good spiritual friend like the Buddha, his disciples were able to walk the Noble Eightfold Path and be liberated from all forms of suffering. So having a good spiritual friend is very essential. But as you know, in the world there are always ranges. There's a range, high level and low level spiritual friend. At the low end, spiritual friend would be your spiritual community, like Pandautama Bodhi Society. People you associate with, sharing communal common goals and objectives. And on the higher end, you will need to find a teacher to teach you how to walk the path. It's quite different from having just low-end friends. Although low-end friends are also very important because they will help to influence the way you think, the way you look at life, the way you set your priorities with regard to the goals in your life. So, having so many teachers and so many different techniques and traditions these days is not really something very special, because even during the Buddha's time, this has been going on. I'm sure all of you are very familiar with the Kalama Sutta, where the Buddha was asked by the Kalamas, who were very confused because so many spiritual teachers and monks and recluses passed through their town and proclaimed that theirs was the only right path and others were wrong. And not only that, they also belittled and disparaged other teachers and other systems. The question they asked is, which of these reverend monks and Brahmins speak the truth and which falsehood? So the question they asked was about the Dhamma, the teachings of these monks and Brahmins who came. How do we know which is true and which is not true? The Buddha went on to say, well, don't go simply by oral tradition, by the lineage of teachings, or by hearsay, or by collection of scriptures, or by logical reasoning, by inferential reasoning, by theorizing, or by considered acceptance of a view, or by the seeming competence of a speaker, or because you think this monk is our teacher. If you look into yourself, into your own minds, I'm sure that many of you have accepted the doctrines, interpretations and practices of Buddhism according to one of these or a combination of these. Right now. Maybe you are not so confused. That's why you have decided to become a Buddhist. Imagine if you are not a Buddhist, you were a truth seeker outside, looking for the so-called truth or direction in life, the purpose and meaning of life. You've got so many different schools of Buddhism, and even within a particular school like Theravada, you've got so many different traditions. And not to talk about the other schools of Buddhism, and not to mention also non-Buddhist spiritual systems. The whole world is so packed with this kaleidoscope of spiritual systems and practices. So the Buddha's advice given to them was, well, don't simply go by all these things, but he stressed on personal experience. When you know for yourselves these things are unwholesome, these things are blamable, these things are censured by the wise, these things, if undertaken in practice, lead to harm and suffering, then you should abandon them. On the other hand, when you know for yourselves these things are wholesome, these things are blameless, these things are praised by the wise, these things, if undertaken and practiced, lead to welfare and happiness, then you should engage in them. So this involves personal experience in the sense that you have experienced before. When somebody asks you to do certain things, you have had experience before with regard to these things, and you compare and see the harm or the benefit you had experienced in the past. Or you could extrapolate in the future. Then the Buddha went on to ask the Kalamas if greed, hate and delusion are evidently unwholesome, blamable things that are censured by the wise, and when practiced and undertaken, they lead to harm and suffering. So they acknowledged that you are so. They also admitted that non-greed, non-hate and non-delusion are evidently wholesome, blameless things that are praised by the wise, and when undertaken and practiced, lead to welfare and happiness. So these are very fundamental things. What the Buddha was saying is that loba, dosa and moha, or greed, hate and delusion, are things that are censured by everybody and very easy to accept. And so the practice is about reducing greed, hatred and delusion and promoting or nurturing non-greed, non-hatred and delusion. This sounds very reasonable. Because the question they asked the Buddha was, how do we decide who is telling the truth? Therefore the Buddha answered in this way. He is basically talking about the teachings. But there's more than just the teachings. If we are too gullible by using our reasoning to just accept something because it sounds so reasonable, it's just like one of those things that the Buddha asked the Kalamas not to rely on. Not by mere reasoning, not by mere inference, not by mere fancy and so forth. There are other criteria that can be found in the suttas as well. And one of them is in the Vimamsaka Sutta, found in the Majjhima Nikaya, number 47. There the Buddha said, monks, an inquirer, not knowing how to gauge another's mind, not able to read another's mind, should investigate the Tathagata with respect to two kinds of states. States cognizable to the eye and to the ear thus. Are there found in the Tathagata or not any defiled states cognizable to the eye or to the ear? Now these standards are very high. He's asking the monks to investigate himself, the Buddha himself. But we can also apply these standards, but maybe lower them a bit to modern day teachers, whether they are monastics or lay people. So the first thing you do is, the Buddha says, go and investigate. Look at the teacher. Go and investigate to see whether that teacher, whether monastic or lay, has any states that are defiled that you can perceive through body and speech, because you cannot read his mind. But you can see his actions and the way he talks, and you can sort of gauge and see whether he is defiled or not. And the next question is, if you ask whether there are found in that person any mixed states cognizable through the eye or through the ear. Mixed states means that this person is not consistent. Sometimes his actions and speech are pure and clean, and at other times he is overcome by other defiled states. So this shows that this person is not really very stable yet. He's still in the process of purifying his mind. And then the next question is to ask whether this person has attained this wholesome state over a long time, or did he attain it recently. This implies that you should not make the decision quickly. You should associate with the person for some time to see whether this person is consistent or not. Then the next question is, has this venerable acquired renown and attained fame so that the dangers connected with renown and fame are found in him? For bhikkhus, as long as a bhikkhu has not acquired renown and attained fame, the dangers connected with renown and fame are not found in him. But when he has acquired renown and attained fame, those dangers are found in him. Okay, when a bhikkhu is staying alone in the forest, minding his own business, and he does not associate with lay people, he can be very pure and serene. But once he starts to associate with lay people, particularly if he's a good teacher, he can teach the Dhamma very well, he's a good speaker, then he gets a lot of supporters, a lot of admirers. When this happens, then you can also see how some people change. They become very conceited, they become very assertive, and they start to criticize other people. The commentary has an interesting way of saying it. When they have become famous and have acquired a following, they go about behaving improperly, attacking other bhikkhus like a leopard pouncing on a herd of deer. This is something that I think everybody has to bear in mind. Because the whole Buddhist society, I'm not talking about Babs, I'm talking about the society of Buddhists, is based upon this hierarchy of respect. When you see a monk, when he's dressed in robes and bald-headed, you pay respect to him because he's part of Buddhist culture. And then even if he's a young monk also, you pay respect to him. And when monks receive that sort of respect from lay people, then automatically they become very egoistic. The whole culture promotes that sort of egoism. And so it's very difficult in such a culture to admonish the monk. And not to talk about lay people. If lay people will say anything to the monk, if he's not well developed, he will certainly throw a tantrum or boycott you or something like that. And a lot of people are also very scared of karma. Right? Very scared. They not say anything, they not do anything in case they create bad karma. But this is not very healthy, This is not very healthy because you treat the monk like a god and a king. And when he's treated that way, of course you will behave like a king or like a god. When I went to visit Indonesia last year, one of the Indonesian lay supporters complained to me about the monks in Indonesia. She said that they are very demanding. They demand to be transported here and there, and they demand to have this and that. They impose a lot of conditions on the people. In the course of my tour of Indonesia and some of the centers there, I found that the centers there are very well supported by the lay people because there are so many rich Buddhists in Indonesia. And I found that the way the monks were trained is based very much on Dhamma propagation. And most of the monks there have been localized in the sense that they receive ordination in Indonesia and they get training in Indonesia. There's a particular monk training center there. So what they do as a Samanera, for the first year or so, they will study a very general education syllabus, which covers not only Buddhism, but also comparative religion. And then later on, they will be encouraged to start to preach at the end of their second year. And even before they start to become a monk, they are already sent to different places to start preaching. And very little emphasis is given to actual practice. Secondly, since the viharas are so well supported, and there is a dire need for local monks. You have a lot of empty viharas with no monks, so the monks have to go around circulating from one vihara, sharing with other viharas. So, of course, supply and demand. If this demand is there for monks, and the supply is so little, of course the monks are treated like real jewels. And then when they get there, you can see, wow, their room is so luxurious. They are pampered and treated like a king. So when this lady and some men, lay supporters, complained to me, I said, since you treated them like kings, they will behave like kings. Yeah? And there's nothing that you can do about it unless you change the system. Right or not? So it's the same also here. It's very important for us to have this consciousness that although we are scared of creating bad karma, we must also try to think of the sasana. Right? Think of the sasana as a whole. The life and the longevity of the sasana depends not only on monks, but on lay people as well. Recently there was a monk in Penang. I don't know whether he was in the papers or not. He was caught for breaking into a house and stole some US dollars. Have you heard about this? You heard about this, huh? And this monk was a former drug addict. He became a monk, and then somehow he returned to his bad habit. And he was staying alone in one of the many kutis in Ayatang. And when people found out that he was accepting ang pao and using the ang pao to buy drugs, then the word got around and to tell people, hey, don't give him ang pao because he used the ang pao to buy drugs. Then this monk got very angry. And then he had the handphone. So he started to SMS everyone and he said, oh, you're creating very bad karma to prevent the people from giving to monks. You see? So in the end he was arrested and put in jail. Luckily, one of the more influential lay people in Penang persuaded him to disrobe. Earlier on, other monks had already asked him to disrobe, but he refused to. Of course, it's so easy to earn a living. Our Chinese have got this inherent respect for monks. And so whenever you see anyone dressed like a monk, bald-headed, automatically you give ang pao. Yeah, it's so easy to earn a living. That's why he refused to disrobe. And according to the Vinaya, no one can actually disrobe a monk. Even if you were to take off his robes and his mind, he does not disrobe, then he's still a monk. But if you commit any of the parajikas, the 4 great offences, one of which is stealing a certain amount, then you are no longer a monk. You don't have to disrobe. Automatically you are no longer a monk. Alright, so but that amount, how much it is quite controversial these days. So anyway, what I'm trying to say is that one should not simply listen to what monks say, and one should not be so scared of creating bad karma that you allow immoral monks to continue living immorally with your support. Yeah, you should not do that. We should be more circumspect, using our discretion. So this is very good. The Buddha is actually telling us to investigate first before you actually accept a person as a teacher. Okay, so the next one is this venerable one restrained without fear, not restrained by fear, and does he avoid indulging in sensual pleasures because he is without lust through the destruction of lust? This is very high standard. This is for the Buddha himself. Lust here means a strong desire. I think majority of monks these days, I would say maybe more than 99% of monks these days have not abandoned lust and have not abandoned defilements yet. But still, we can use a relative standard to look at how monks behave. And I think in order to gauge whether a monk is behaving properly or not, you need to know something about Vinaya rules. Right or not? And I believe that in your free distribution shelf, you have a whole stack of books on Bhikkhu rules for lay people in the red. So I would encourage you to go and read it. So at least you know, you can gauge whether monks are behaving properly or not. And you should also try to use your discretion in supporting monks who are not moral. When I was in Singapore, there was a couple. And the couple was from Penang. The lady is Chinese, but she was born in Phuket, in Thailand, and so she has a Thai culture in her. She's a very pious lady. So one day, both of them were in the coffee shop in Singapore. And then as they were having their meal, a bogus monk came along. Not a Theravada monk. I think he's dressed in the Mahayana attire. And then automatically the wife reached out to give money. And then the husband said, hey, don't give money. Don't give money. And then he said, hey, you don't create bad karma. He said, I was told by my mother, we just donate. Whatever the monk does to the money is his business. Our business is to just support the monks. I don't think that's a very good policy. Yeah? And so these two are having an argument, and they came to ask me to settle the argument. So I told them, you must use your discretion. Although it is good to do merit by donating to monks, you must understand that if you donate money to monks, you are encouraging them to break their precepts. Alright? And so I say, if you still want to give to a monk, well, what you can do is buy something and give it to that monk. So that's what I said, and I told people that you should really use your discretion and help the sasana. Not helping the monks, but helping the sasana. If you help good monks, automatically you are helping the sasana. If you go and support bad monks, immoral monks, then you are helping the sasana to disappear faster. Okay? Then the next thing he's supposed to ask is whether that venerable one dwells in a sangha alone, or some there are well behaved and some are ill behaved, and some there teach a group. While some here are seen concerned with material things and some are unsullied by material things, still that venerable one does not despise anyone because of that. So what I'm trying to say is that this monk doesn't have a condescending sort of attitude. He doesn't look down on other people. Whether other monks are well behaved or not well behaved, whether they are concerned about material things or not so concerned about material things, he does not despise them. It's called equanimity. Then the next step is to ask question 1 to 3 of the teacher directly. Question 1 says that you have to investigate whether there are any defiled states in regard to what you can see and hear in the person, and whether they are mixed states or not, and whether they are cleansed states or not. Of course, not so easy to ask a teacher nowadays, but this is what the Buddha said. If you were to ask him, he would tell you directly, I have got no defiled states, and I've got no mixed states, and I have cleansed states. His mind is always clear, and this is how he answers it. Cleansed states cognizable to the eye or to the ear are found in your Tathagata. They are my pathway and my domain, yet I do not identify with them. What he's trying to say is that although I don't have any defilements, and although my mind is always pure and clean, I do not have any egoistic thoughts about them. I do not think that I am great, because the Buddha has completely eradicated conceit. So, although monks nowadays or teachers nowadays have not abandoned conceit, the level of conceit of a person depends on his practice. The more you practice, the more you see yourself, you are able to reduce your defilements, and the more humble you become, and less conceited you are. If you are very conceited and always looking down on others who are not as good as you, or putting down others so that you can be pushed up, there is something wrong somewhere. When you go through this investigation and you find that the teacher passes through all these tests, then the Buddha says, well, then such a teacher is worthy of being approached by a disciple in order to hear the Dhamma. So this is just about the individual. To sum up, what you're supposed to do is, don't simply accept a person because he can speak very well. You have to go and investigate and see whether this person's speech and bodily behavior are pure or not, defiled or not. Okay? And then also you have to find out and see how he behaves with respect to fame and renown. Now, the next thing is to talk about his Dhamma, his teachings. What sort of Dhammas does he teach? So the Buddha says that, well, this teacher whom we are going to follow should teach the Dhamma in a graduated way, with its higher and higher levels, with its more and more sublime levels, with its dark and bright counterparts. So he has to teach you the Dhamma in a graduated way, telling you the pros and cons of doing certain practices. Then as the teacher teaches the Dhamma to Bhikkhu in this way, through direct knowledge of a certain teaching here in the Dhamma, the Bhikkhu comes to a conclusion about the teachings. He places confidence in the teacher thus: the Blessed One is fully enlightened, the Dhamma is well proclaimed, the Sangha is practicing the good way. Okay, this shows that one arrives at a firm faith and confidence in the teacher and the teachings through one's own direct experience. Now first you try to gauge the teacher first and see whether he walks his talk or not. And then when you are satisfied that he walks his talk to a great degree, maybe not absolutely, but to a great degree, then you can go and listen to his teachings, try to follow them, and through following his teachings, which are supposed to have been preached in a graduated and systematic way, and you put them into practice and you realize for yourselves. So that is a sort of a direct personal verification of the teachings that will give you a confirmed faith. Now this is according to that sutta called the Vimamsaka Sutta, the Inquirer. But the Buddha says, you cannot read another person's mind. This is what you need to do when you want to look for a potential teacher. Then there is also another sutta in Majjhima Nikaya 95 called the Chanki Sutta, where the Buddha talked about 5 grounds upon which we base our acceptance of things. And he says these 5 grounds are: number 1, faith; number 2, fancy; number 3, oral tradition; number 4, theorizing; and number 5, considered acceptance of another person's view. Let me explain what this means. What the Buddha is saying is that when we accept something, whether it's a teaching or an idea or a piece of news, a piece of information, we do so based on one or a combination of these 5 things. What are these 5 grounds? The first one is on faith. Right? The second one is on your fancy, you like it. The third one is based on oral tradition. And the fourth one is based on your own personal theorizing. And the fifth one is based on considered acceptance of somebody else's view. Let me give you a few practical examples. Suppose you go to see a doctor for some sickness that you have, and the doctor prescribes to you certain medicine. You take home and eat it. Now, you accept the decision of the doctor based on what? On faith, right? You have faith in the doctor, that's why you accept his prescription and you go and try it out. Right or not? Okay, this is very simple. The second one is based on fancy. You just like something and you accept it. Just because you like it. You just like the idea because it appeals to you just for that reason. And the third one is on oral tradition. Okay, this is also very simple. Like now, you all come here, I see that there are some diagrams on notice board. How to do the 5-point prostration. Right? And a lot of people do that. Why? Because it's a tradition, has been handed down. But if you actually research into it, this 5-point prostration cannot be found in the suttas. It cannot be found in the suttas, cannot be found in the commentaries. So where does it come from? It's a cultural tradition. I don't know where it came from actually. It is practiced in Burma, Thailand and Sri Lanka. But there are some slight variations. Okay, so we accept this because it's a tradition. Yeah? And for us Chinese also, we accept, for example, many Chinese traditions. Like, for example, Qingming and 7-month festival. This is also another tradition that we just accept because it's part of our tradition. And the fourth one is theorizing, using your own intelligence to theorize. For example, there's this big scandal going on in Singapore about the church, City Harvest Church, saying that the pastors and the people at the top, they misappropriated millions of Singapore dollars for their own personal use. So this is a piece of news, and you will probably try to theorize, why they did this, for what reason, and so forth. And you arrive at a theory that you form yourself. How could they have done it? Because the Singapore government is so stringent. How could they have slipped through the surveillance of the Singapore government? And you come up with your own theory of how they could have done it if you are a tax expert or something. And then you arrive at that theory through your own theorizing, and then you hold on to it, and you say, that is the way they did it. Then number 5 is accepting somebody else's view. Maybe you are not an expert in taxation, or you listen to your friend, and after considering his or her theory, then you accept it. Okay, so this one is not doing your own theorizing, but considering another person's view, then you accept that. Okay, that is through your intellect. Now, the Buddha says that when we accept anything through any of these 5 grounds, or a combination of them, if you are wise enough, you should never say that this is true and others are false. Why? Because it's not verified. Right? First is faith, second one is through your liking, third one is because it's oral tradition, fourth one is because of your own intellectual reasoning, and the fifth one is because of somebody else's view. Yeah? So because of that, you should never say that this is correct, this is the only one, this is the only correct thing, everything else is wrong. Why? Because the Buddha says that if you accept something based on any one of these, one or combination of these grounds, then what you accepted may turn out to be false. And what you did not accept may turn out to be true in the end. Since most of the things that we accept are based on one or a combination of these things, we should always be very careful and never be too assertive. Always be very cautious. The Buddha was actually talking about this to a young Brahmin. And then the young Brahmin asked the Buddha, then how does one preserve truth? Then the Buddha says, the way to preserve truth is to state exactly, this is my faith, this is my liking, this is my tradition, this is the way I theorized it, this is somebody else's view which I accepted. Not to say that this is the truth, this is the way it was. And to give an example, most of the suttas start with evam me suttam, which means thus was heard by me. Right? And we are not really sure whether this is the words of the Buddha or not, because during the Buddha's time, we didn't have any tape recorders, we didn't have any video cams, we didn't even record down on paper or any sort of material. Everything was heard through the ear, memorized and passed down from generation to generation for about 500 years before these teachings were actually put down in paper. So we don't really know what the Buddha said. These are all hearsay. What we have in the suttas are just hearsay. Okay, so although we take refuge in the Dhamma in the sense that we consult the scriptures whenever we have any doubts about how to interpret or practice the Dhamma, still we should do so with caution. Never be so assertive to say that this is the only truth. Okay, then this Brahmin youth started to ask the Buddha, so now I understand this is the preservation of truth, stating exactly how you got your information, and stating exactly the grounds upon which you base your acceptance. But how does one discover truth? Then the Buddha says, well, in order to discover truth, you have to look for a teacher. And he goes on to, again, give the criteria for choosing a suitable teacher. And again, it's a similar sort of criteria. He says, first of all, you have to investigate your potential teacher in regard to states based on greed, hatred and delusion. Are there, in this venerable one, any states based on greed or hate or delusion such that, with his mind obsessed by those states, while not knowing, he might say, I know, or while not seeing, he might say, I see, or he might urge others to act in a way that would lead to their harm and suffering for a long time. Okay, you know that our actions, our speech are always a product of what goes on in our minds. If your potential teacher is one who has defiled mind, then what he says and what he does will be influenced by his mental states. Right or not? If he is really a very egoistic person, very conceited person, a very self-centered person, sometimes he might say things which are not true. He must do things which are not suitable in order to protect his own self-interests, because he is obsessed by attachment to his image or attachment to the funds that he can get for his organization, for his work, for his cause, or because he is angry at someone for bruising his ego, right? So he could say things which are untrue or do things which are not according to reality because of these defilements. So you have to investigate carefully. In order to investigate carefully, you cannot do it overnight. You have to associate with that person, observe and see for some time before you can arrive at a more accurate, although not 100% accurate, a more accurate conclusion. If he investigates this person and he comes to know that his bodily and verbal behavior are not corrupted by greed, hatred or delusion. Okay, this one is also very high standard, because this applies only to an Arahant or a Buddha. But for those teachers who are not so highly attained, we can see the degree of corruption. If they are little corrupted, then you can sort of close one eye. If they are too corrupted, then of course you have to think about it, be more serious about it. And after he has passed this test of verbal and bodily behavior, then he go on to investigate his teachings. Right? The teachings that he teaches, is it profound? Is it hard to see and hard to understand? And yet, is it peaceful and sublime? And it is not the sphere of mere reasoning, and it is subtle to be experienced by the wise. Okay, so what he's trying to say here is that what he teaches is not just theoretical knowledge. It's very profound, and it's hard to see, difficult to understand, but you have to put it into practice. If he can put it into practice and you can see the results as he has preached, which means to say he walks his talk, then you can come to the conclusion. This sort of Dhamma that he preaches cannot easily be taught by one corrupted by greed, hate or delusion. So this satisfies this condition. The Buddha says, once this person passes all these tests for verbal and bodily conduct, and he also passes the test of the teachings, then one should place faith in him, visit him, and attend to him. Visit him means you approach him. Attend to him means hang around him and serve him. In the old days, in India, there was this mentor-disciple relationship. When you want to become a disciple or a pupil, you have to serve the teacher. Nowadays, it is lost, even in the monastic tradition. There are only very limited number of monastic communities who still try to preserve this, because it's very important. Mentorship is very important because you learn more through example than through theory. Nowadays, there are so many monks and the preceptor accepts so many disciples, he doesn't have time to take care of them. So this intimate relationship between mentor and pupil is missing. So what they learn is a lot of theory, and they can pass exams, get very good marks, a good score, but conduct-wise, behavior-wise, is still lacking. Okay, after you place faith in this person, then you visit him, you attend to him, and when you attend to him, you can really gauge his behavior. If you get close to a person, then you can get to know more about that person. A public figure may be quite different from his private life. In the process of attending to him and you get to know more about him, you can also give ear to what he says, you listen to his Dhamma, and then you try to memorize it. In the old days, it's just to memorize. Nowadays, you can take notes in your handphone, right? And then go back and examine the meaning of the teachings that you have noted down. And then as you examine these teachings, you find that, it's very reasonable, very doable, and you accept those teachings. And because of that, zeal springs up in you. Having zeal, you try out those teachings, try and see whether it will work or not, right? And as you try it out, then you compare what he has learned before in the past through other techniques or methods and compare with what he's doing now, and he finds that what he's doing now is better than what he has done before, then he strives, and because he strives, he realizes by himself the ultimate truth and sees it by penetrating it with wisdom. In this way, there is the discovery of truth. In this paragraph, the Buddha talks about the whole process of approaching a teacher and then attending to him, listening to his talks, and how you process the information that he has given you and put it into practice and verify the teachings according to your own personal experience. So, this is the discovery of truth. You can discover truth by following the teachings of a particular teacher. Why is this so? Why must you follow the teacher? This is one of the factors involved, factors required for the attainment of stream entry. There are actually 4 requirements. The first one is that you need to associate with a good person, a good friend, a competent teacher. Secondly, you need to listen to the Dhamma that this teacher preaches. And thirdly, you have to pay attention while he teaches. And fourthly, you put into practice what you heard. And these are the 4 things. So if one of them is missing, for example, the first one is missing, you will not be able to get the others. So that's why number 1 is so very, very important. So this is just a discovery of truth, getting the first glimpse of the ultimate truth. Then the Brahmin went on to ask the Buddha, in what way does one finally arrive at truth? Then the Buddha answered, the final arrival at truth lies in the repetition, development and cultivation of those same things. Which means that you have to do it again and again and again in order to get the higher paths, the higher stages of enlightenment. There's also another interesting sutta found in the Samyutta Nikaya called the Tinukko Pariyaya Sutta. The title translated in English means, is there a way? A discourse on the question, is there a way? Is there a means? Now in this sutta, the Buddha asked the monks, he says, monks, is there a way whereby, without recourse to the 5 grounds that we talked about just now? Remember the 5 grounds? Right? The first one is faith, second is fancy, third is oral tradition, fourth is your own theorizing, and fifth is accepting somebody else's view. So the Buddha says, is there a way or a means whereby, without recoursing to any of these 5 grounds, one can eventually declare arahantship? Okay? See what I mean? Alright. How can you become an arahant without recourse to these 5 things? That means what you accept, you don't base on your faith, you don't base on your fancy, you don't base on oral tradition, you don't base on your own theorizing, and you don't base on somebody else's view. So this is particularly very useful for people who have little faith and who are more intellectually inclined. Why not? Because in most meditative traditions, you have to have faith in the teacher, faith in the technique, before you can actually put it into practice. Before you go into a retreat center or meditation center, you are required that you must follow all the rules and regulations in the center, follow the technique in the center and not any other methods. So in this sutta, the Buddha says, is there a way? And of course the monks did not answer. They say, you are the Lord of the Dhamma. Will you please tell us the answer? And then we will bear it in mind. So the Buddha says, okay, very simple. All you need to do is to observe your 6 senses. Observe how your mind reacts or responds to the 6 senses. Whenever you see something and then there is greed or hate or delusion in your mind, be aware that there is greed, hatred or delusion in your mind. Whenever you hear something, smell something, taste something, feel something with your body, or whenever you think about something and there is greed or hate or delusion in your mind, know that there is greed, hatred or delusion in your mind. And where there is none, know also that there is none. Just by doing this, you can eventually attain arahantship. So easy, Particularly if you don't have to come for puja every evening, you don't have to memorize anything, you don't have to read the whole Tipitaka, don't have to study Abhidhamma. All you need to do is just watch your mind. Very simple. And then don't even have to depend on the teacher. Don't have to go and investigate, and see whether this teacher is like that, and then create a lot of bad karma. Okay, so let me summarize what I've said today. I started off by saying that good friendship is important, but it's difficult to choose the right person. So we're using the guidelines from the suttas. The first thing to do is to investigate the conduct and behavior of your potential teacher according to Buddhist ethics, such as how pure is he in monastic or lay morality, and secondly, is he conceited, arrogant, condescending, self-important, or is he humble, cautious, understanding, kind and modest. Then investigate how he teaches the Dhamma. Does he teach in a graduated, systematic way, according to the maturity, inclination and temperament of the listener? Or does he teach in a stereotyped, dogmatic, inflexible manner? Or does he teach in a haphazard, unsystematic, muddled way? And does he teach while blowing his own trumpet and disparaging others groundlessly? So that's how you investigate how he teaches. Then you investigate his teaching. Does it agree with the core teachings of the Buddha, such as the Four Noble Truths, the Noble Eightfold Path, the Three Characteristics, and Dependent Origination? And you need to do a little bit of theory, and these are not very, very difficult ones, right? Just Four Noble Truths, Noble Eightfold Path, which is part of the Four Noble Truths, and then the Three Characteristics of Existence, impermanence, suffering and not self, and dependent origination. Dependent origination need not necessarily mean that you must learn by heart all the 12 links, It's just looking at how your mind functions due to causes and conditions. And then in the investigation of his teaching, you try to find out whether his teachings are profound, hard to see and difficult to understand, yet peaceful and sublime, leads to peace. It's not the sphere of mere reasoning, not just talk, but subtle to be experienced personally by the wise practitioner. And finally, the benchmark. Does it lead to the reduction of lobha, dosa and moha? Any forms of attachment, any form of dislike or aversion, any form of delusion. And therefore to a more meaningful life with less suffering, more contentment, peace and happiness. And the most important thing here, of course, is of the three evil roots, greed, hatred and delusion. Delusion is the worst. It is because of delusion that there is greed. And it is because of the greed that there is anger, disappointment, because you cannot get what you want. Right? What is delusion? Delusion means not being able to see things in terms of the three characteristics. Whenever you see things as permanent, or as happiness, or as me, myself, then there's really delusion. So if you keep on watching your mind the whole day, I can assure you, most of the time you can see delusion. And when you see delusion, there's not delusion. So when you can identify that your mind is looking at things in a deluded way, at that point of time, it is wisdom. Right? So when you are able to watch your mind and you can identify delusion every time it happens, that is wisdom itself. Okay? The next point is, always be cautious about your decision. Bearing in mind the fallibility of the 5 grounds of acceptance, namely faith, fancy, oral tradition, theorizing, and considered acceptance of a view, never be assertive about your conviction, but be prepared to change when new observations and facts are shown. Because our world now keeps on changing so fast. Our technological developments keep on increasing. If at the beginning of the year you bought a computer, by now there's more new models coming up, which are faster with better memory, better hard disk storage space. So with all your handphones and so on, what you bought in the beginning of the year and now maybe a bit outdated already. So technological advancement is so fast. So you must always bear in mind that you must be prepared to change. Don't be so attached to a fixed idea. Finally, you need to have sufficient faith and confidence to start and persevere. Some degree of faith is still necessary because many of our perceptions may not be 100% accurate or even verifiable. Right now, you still need to have some faith. For example, having faith that the Buddha was really enlightened. Having faith that the Dhamma that has been transmitted more than 2,500 years down the line is still pure enough to follow and achieve enlightenment. This is all based on faith, right? You need to have some degree of faith. But the best yardstick is to check your own mental states and behavior, or to get candid feedback from a fellow practitioner or a close friend about whether you have reduced bad habits and improved your character. People say that the best person to say how well you've improved is your spouse. Yeah, closest to you. So if you go for meditation retreats very often, and then you come back, and then your spouse complains that you are still the same or worse than before, something is wrong somewhere. Okay, for those with little faith and more intellectual inclinations, remember to apply the Buddha's instructions in Ati Nukho Pariyaya Sutta, which I talked about just now, which is just to keep a continual watch on the defilements in the mind as it reacts or responds to the six senses. Very simple. All you need to do is always try to come back to your senses. Your senses means that, for example, right now you are listening to me, you can still be aware of your body, right? Yeah, you can be aware of your body, the sense that the body is there. You can be aware that you are listening, not only to me, but other sounds as well. You can be aware that you are looking. You can be aware of what's going on in your mind. How are you processing the information that is received through your ears and your brain? Okay? And then, while you are doing that, you can watch your mind to see if there are any defilements there. Is your mind defiled? Is there greed, hatred or delusion? Or is there no greed, no hatred, no delusion? You'll be surprised that even while you're listening to a Dhamma talk, there can still be delusion. There can still be delusion in the sense that you think that I am listening to Bhante. That's already a delusion. The sense of I, the sense of he, I and you. So delusion is so pervasive. And you need to really be very sharp, to be on your toes, to be able to catch the defilements. And look at them as anicca, dukkha, anatta. Even if there is defilement in you, it doesn't belong to you. Yeah? The defilements are just visitors. Like the Buddha said, the mind is luminous. It is only defiled by visiting defilements. But the visitors have become so at home that they are now squatters. And if you want to evict squatters, you got to compensate. So that's why now you have got to go to retreat. Not just to mindful awareness the whole day, not enough. You have to go for retreat to compensate them, to evict them from your pure mind. Okay? So I hope that by today's talk, you have gained enough information not to be too gullible and not to be too shrewd, and walk the noble, eightfold path with balanced spiritual faculties. Okay? I'll end here. Do we still have time for any questions? Or a few questions maybe.
Okay. I like the part when you mentioned that you can achieve arahanthood with a very simple thing, like being awareness. To normal people, if they have the wisdom, they know this, then it's okay to follow. But how about people who have mental problem, people who have physical problem, people who have ill health, who are not in the proper state of mind, so they may not be able to act or behave like what we wish them to do to be in the normal self. So people who are a bit mentally not well, they just frustrate or they just scream or they just lost their control. People who are medically not well, for example, a lady in a post-menopause, acute menopausal symptoms, they just scream at you when you irritate them a bit. So how do we react to this? And is there any way in the Dharma who can help these people?
Yeah, I thought last night Ismail Kumara was here on the forum, right? Do you attend the forum? Answers are there already. Talk about depression and how to help people and all that. Actually, there's one American by the name of Dr. John Kabat-Zinn. He started more than 20 years ago what he called the mindfulness-based stress reduction program in the United States. It's all based on mindfulness practice, coming back to the present moment. And he has a 8-week course, I think. You have to go through that course. He started off actually in the cancer ward for terminal cancer patients who had to deal with a lot of pain. And through the application of mindfulness, they were able to reduce their stress because of their non-reaction to it. Normal reaction of people is they would like to push it away. They don't like it. They start to talk to themselves, I don't deserve this. Why should I get this? And so forth. And because of that, it increases the suffering. So, when they go through this 8-week course on mindfulness stress reduction technique, they come to terms with themselves. They are able to train the mind to accept the pain without reacting to it. So they have only one pain instead of multiple pain. Why not? If you have one pain and then you react to it, you don't like it, then you create even more pain mentally and physically because your unwholesome state of mind will stimulate the glands to produce biochemicals that make you feel miserable. Okay? So there is a way, but it has to be done in a proper course, not like what I said just now. That was not meant for mental patients, not meant for sick people. It was meant for monks, normal, healthy people. If you are sick or disabled in some way, you have to go to a special course where this mindfulness technique can be adapted to your particular situation. And it has actually become very, very popular in Western countries nowadays. And mindfulness has been applied to not only in the field of psychology or psychotherapy, but also in terms of stress when dealing with pain in terminal case patients. Okay?
I have more like growing up through Mahayana practice and always chant using Mahayana practice. The thing is that when I first know about Theravada practice, correct me if I'm wrong, there are a difference between Mahayana and Theravada. And then I was kind of shocked when I got to know that there are certain things that Theravada don't agree with Mahayana. Things like a pure land, a nirvana, and that like Buddha sitting there waiting for us when we pass away, and we have to chant all the way to actually go to that place. But in Theravada practice, there are like different mindsets, like this place never exists. So there's like things lingering in my mind that whether the Buddhism that I believe so far has changed now, so that I'm sort of in between, and I still practice my chanting in the morning, but somehow it just disturbed my mind that whether I believe the wrong thing or what is the correct way. Thank you.
So you have to find your own truth. You have to decide for yourself. But why wait until next life? Do it now lah. Actually, chanting Namo Amito in your daily life is also one way of anchoring your mind. Right? So when your mind is not with your chanting, find out where is the mind. What is the mind doing? Right? So because when you chant Namo Amito in your daily activities, if you've done it as a habit, then your mind is automatically composed most of the time. The moment it runs off, you know. Right? Then you look back at it. Is it a defiled mind or not defiled? Look at it in terms of impermanence, not me, not myself. It came about because of causes and conditions. So what you have done in the past has not gone to waste. It creates a very good foundation for you to watch your own mind. Okay? Next, please.
Yeah, just now you mentioned about the mindfulness-based stress reduction, which is only popular in the Western country and not in the Asian countries. I have not seen anyone doing that yet in Malaysia. I guess we have a lot of people here who are under a lot of stress, mental suffering, physical suffering. Without that, Western is using a very specific way of doing it. So whether or not in the Asian country like Malaysia, can we apply the same methods here as well? If we don't have that availability of NDSR program here, whether we can go through the Buddhist way of meditation to help ourselves. Thank you.
When I was conducting my Satipatthana workshop in JB, somebody gave me a newspaper cutting, or not really cutting, some sheets from one of the features in the New Straits Times from Singapore. There was a news report saying that at least 6 well-known hospitals in Singapore have been using mindfulness in their therapy for patients. And very, very high rate of success. And they are continuing to do so, and it will probably be implemented in other hospitals as well. It's interesting. Of course, they try not to make it Buddhist. They just talk about mindfulness practice, and they got their training from the Oxford Mindfulness Center, from UK. Some people from the Oxford Mindfulness Center came down to Singapore to lead a course for the doctors and the nurses there. So it is catching up in Singapore. And I'm sure you have heard of Dr. Pang. Dr. Pang on Malaysia. He's got a Malaysian, what is it called?
Kuala Lumpur Buddhist Mental Association.
Mental Health.
Mental Health. Yes,
Yeah, it's founded by Dr. Pang. He's a Buddhist and a practicing psychiatrist. He has really done a lot of good. Right now also he's doing this mindful gym program. And he's very, very active in trying to spread mindfulness and Buddhist practices among the medical profession, particularly connected with psychiatry and psychotherapy. Yeah? So it is taking off in Malaysia too. It's a matter of time before it can be implemented on a wider scale in our hospitals. Alright.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.